Hello my fellow Archons and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to discuss Grim Reminders with you guys. The set has seen a lot of contention and controversy since its release, and I've just got a few thoughts that have been on my mind, namely 5 ways I would fix or adjust Grim Reminders to make it a little less degenerate and unsatisfactory for some. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this set. It's my favorite set by far. I absolutely adore its mechanics such as discard pips and scrap abilities, Geistoid is awesome, and the power level is right up my alley, for the most part. I do have to admit that it does have a number of extremely degenerate and feels bad play experiences that are quite prevalent, and that's mostly what I want to address. If it wasn't for these 5 things I'm about to mention, Grim Reminders would be a nearly perfect set in my opinion, aside from some houses being more desirable than others, but I feel like that's always existed to some extent in most KeyForge sets. But with that out of the way, without further ado, let's get into it. Fix number 1, they shouldn't have reprinted Ironix Rebel. One of the big complaints I hear about Mars in this set is the extremely easy and common rule of 6 capability that they have, with cards like Dr. X, Ironix Rebel, Mars First, and Zip the Implanter. Those first 3 all appear at common, while Zip is at uncommon. Now, I would assume Rebel and Mars First were reprinted to make Dr. X more consistently usable, which is perfectly understandable. He's very clearly a high priority threat, so when the opponent sees him across the table, it's not usually too hard to find 2 damage to remove him from the board. Ready and use abilities mean you can get use out of him the same turn you play him, and I think that's fine, but not in the form of Ironix Rebel. Rebel is the reason the rule of 6 shenanigans are constantly taking place, playing him from your discard pile ready, finding a way to destroy him, be that through fighting or the aforementioned Zip, then reaping with Dr. X and whatever other Mars creature that was ready, and repeating over and over. Mars First was already reprinted, and is a perfectly decent approach to getting consistent use out of Dr. X, but reprinting Rebel along with Mars First was totally unnecessary and way over the top. If Rebel wasn't in the set, Mars would be way more chill, less degenerate, and less able to go on these 10-minute solitaire turns ending in a free key abduction. With just Mars First and Dr. X, you could still get some decent bursts in value, maybe even chaining multiple Dr. X's together like you can with Retro Technician Lee, but it wouldn't be totally obnoxious like it is currently with Rebel thrown in the mix. Fix number 2 would have to be made to Winds of Death. Before Ectocharge was eroded, that and Winds of Death were like the top 2 cards everyone complained to no end about. Now Ectocharge has been fixed, and people continue complaining to no end about Winds of Death, and I can see why. I think what was originally meant to be its drawback or balancing mechanic, that of each player archiving each creature from their discard pile, turned out to just be even more of a boon in addition to destroying everything on the board. Genka might as well be a thing of the past at this point. Now it's Vodka or die, baby. Winds of Death truly is the perfect combo piece to go with Key Abduction. Winds of Death is an enabler for lots of ridiculous combos, and that's just one of them. So how can you fix it? I feel like adding chains wouldn't do a whole lot, to be perfectly honest, although that's usually the classic answer for full-on board wipes. A solution I've seen mentioned a few times is limiting how many creatures can be archived with it. Maybe you only archive the top 5 creatures of each player's discard pile before destroying everything. That way you can still try to time it properly so only you get to archive, but at least then you're not straight up archiving half your deck under ideal circumstances. Even in its current state, there are still a number of situations and matchups in which you may not want to play Winds, and limiting how many creatures it can archive still keeps those decision points while balancing it out a whole lot more. It doesn't instantly and easily set you up for a free key abduction next turn, or enable you to drop a whole house of creatures at once, but it still lets you find its maximum value and potentially pull off some big bursty plays. And perhaps limiting it to just 1 per deck would be helpful too, or making it a rare. It's already such an incredibly powerful board clear and combo enabler, having more than one seems a little excessive, especially when the set is already filled with so much easy and strong removal, including another board wipe right there in Geistoid. So speaking of archives, fix number 3 for me is this. I wish there was more archive hate. As it stands, Winds of Death is the way it is, and there are hardly any ways to punish big archives, like what it currently creates. Aside from Cultural Exchange, a Star Alliance rare, there are no cards in set that affect your opponent's archives, and Cultural Exchange would rarely work as a viable answer to Winds anyway. Across the rest of KeyForge, you've only got a couple Shadows uncommons, Fidget and Merkins, an Untamed common, Tentadlin, and a Mars rare, Yizfiz No Drone, that can chip away at their archives 1 card at a time. Desania is the definitive answer to big archives, but again, it's rare and only shows up in limited sets, Grim Reminders not included. If only there were just a few cards in GR at common, preferably in multiple houses, that would make Winds a little riskier to play. Something like Recklessness but for archives. Maybe there could be an artifact that says your opponent can only have 3 or less cards in their archives at a time. Perhaps a really big creature that doesn't let your opponent pull their archives at all. It just seems crazy to me that there is 0 effective archive hate in GR, a set with plenty of cards that can fill up its owner's archives really quickly and easily, so I think archive hate could be really helpful and could have gone a long way. Fix number 4 is that there are too many easy and oftentimes free key cheats in the set. Some are naturally designed to be free, such as Might Makes Right and Dark Discovery, whereas others just turn out to be free much of the time due to their enablers like Key Abduction and Pre-Errata Ectocharge. Now there have been sets in the past with even more key cheats than Grim Reminders, for example Age of Ascension and Worlds Collide each have 8 of them, but very rarely were they free to forge with, if ever, and they didn't have the same amounts of easy setup as the ones in GR. The game feels more uninteractive than ever when the opponent can just drop 2 rickety cyber giants and a shock herder and forge for free with MMR, then get it back immediately next turn with a couple of emotes and Winds of Death or something. Easy, common key cheats can just make your Ember control and even your overarching game plan feel meaningless much of the time. You could have all the steal, capture, and scaling control in the world, but if your opponent can simply vodka you, or hit an MMR with 3 or 4 creatures, or sometimes even 1, it literally doesn't matter. Of course, key cheats have existed since the beginning, and there are plenty of Coda decks out there that will just OTK you out of nowhere with their Chodas and Dust Pixies and Nature's Calls. AoE can Genka, then follow up with archiving it or nepseeding it. But these perfect pods are far more rare and seen way less often than the degenerate stuff in GR is. In some ways, I don't mind that all too much because now lots of people can get their hands on some pretty spicy stuff, but at the same time, it can lead to more degeneracy and feels bad moments than ever, so I see both sides of the coin. My last fix is that there are too many creatures entering play ready. In the past, creatures coming in ready was a precious and easily countered commodity. Duskwitch, Fandangle, Rocketeer Triska, and Soft Landing were among the more notable examples. More recently, Legionary Trainer and Berserker have been shown to be quite powerful under the right circumstances, and Belligerent Guard has a cost attached, while Speed Sigil is two-sided. But in GR, creatures that are already pretty decent are entering play ready left and right. Retro Technician Lee can chain like crazy with multiple copies of him. We've got things like Albia Stray and the Grim Reaper, and of course the whole Dr. X thing we mentioned earlier. But those are hardly the worst offenders. Beanstalk allows every single friendly giant to enter play ready, and has an action that puts one into your hand. Witch Queen lets every friendly witch come in ready, which is already known as a very powerful type of creature. But beyond that, she also gives every witch Skirmish, Elusive, Poison, and the Harmala Attune Destroy treatment. It's just way over the top, and there's very little your opponent can do about it outside of certain control, which they may or may not have in that matchup. Now, I do appreciate being able to get instant use out of creatures the turn you play them, but I feel like, rather than the card itself inherently entering play ready, it seems like there should be a separate card that can ready them after the fact, such as Mars First or Staff Sergeant Rhea. Of course, one-off examples like Gizelhart's Zealot and Belligerent Guard are cool too, and I'm a big fan of examples such as those, but once we reach the territory of an entire trait entering play ready with little to no cost, like Witches, Giants, or Scientists, that's when it can get a little out of control in my opinion. But those are just a few of my thoughts. Iron X Rebel shouldn't have been reprinted, Winds of Death is a little too wild, there's not enough archive hate, there are too many free and easy key cheats, and there are too many creatures entering play ready. Now again, I do adore this set, and I would have loved it even more if it had been perfected just a touch more, and these sorts of changes had been made beforehand. I think power cards are awesome, things like In Here Somewhere, Retro Lee, Junk Restoration, and Think from the Deep are great. I always prefer cards and sets that press the boundaries a little bit, but it is a line that's easily stepped over, seen in cards like Winds of Death. Besides these 5 gripes that can make top tier Grim Reminders a really unfun and uninteractive set, I think its power level is phenomenal, and I love how now more players than ever have a far greater chance of opening something really strong. I desperately hope Ghost Galaxy doesn't pull back too hard on that in Ember Skies and beyond, but can rather maintain a high and balanced power level without stepping over the line like they have in a few ways in GR. And there we have it. Once again, this is all just my own personal opinion. There are some real GR haters out there, but I for one don't mind it, and hope to see more sets like this one, just a little more polished. Let me know what you guys think of these 5 points in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you fix about Grim Reminders? How would you revise my points? Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.